You've probably knocked on wood at least once in your life, hoping to avoid jinxing yourself. But did you know this little ritual dates back thousands of years to ancient Celtic beliefs? It turns out the superstitions we casually practice today are far from random quirks. They're echoes of ancient cultures that shaped the way we think about luck, fate, and the unknown. Why do we avoid walking under ladders? What's the deal with Friday the 13th? And why do so many of us cross our fingers for good fortune without even thinking about it? These seemingly modern habits have deep, fascinating roots in history, and they reveal how the beliefs of our ancestors still influence our lives in ways we might not even realize. In this video, we'll dive into the origins of these everyday rituals, uncovering the surprising stories behind the superstitions we still live by. Get ready to explore how ancient cultures have left their mark on the way we navigate the world, and maybe even challenge what you think you know about these age-old traditions. Imagine standing in the heart of ancient Mesopotamia, where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers carved a fertile cradle for one of the world's earliest civilizations. Here, under the vast expanse of the night sky, early humans gazed upward, searching for meaning in the stars. They saw patterns, omens, gods, and messages woven into the celestial tapestry. For them, the unknown wasn't just a mystery, it was a force to be reckoned with. And so they turned to rituals, prayers, and symbols to make sense of a world filled with unpredictability. This was the birthplace of superstitions, where the line between the divine and the everyday blurred into a rich tapestry of belief. In ancient Egypt, the Nile's annual flooding wasn't just a natural event, it was a divine act, a sign from the gods. Priests interpreted dreams, omens, and even the flight patterns of birds to predict the future. The Egyptians believed that every occurrence, no matter how small, was a message from the gods. A black cat crossing your path, that wasn't just a coincidence, it was a sign. These beliefs weren't just about survival, they were about understanding the unseen forces that governed life and death. Meanwhile, in ancient Greece, philosophers like Plato and Aristotle wrestled with the idea of fate and free will, but even they couldn't escape the pull of superstition. The Greeks consulted oracles, sought signs in animal entrails, and believed in the power of curses and blessings. The Oracle of Delphi, for instance, was one of the most revered institutions in the ancient world. People traveled from far and wide to hear her prophecies, trusting her words as divine truth. Historians like Herodotus noted how these practices weren't just cultural quirks, they were deeply embedded in the fabric of daily life. What's fascinating is how these ancient beliefs didn't just fade away with time. Instead, they adapted, morphing into the superstitions we recognize today. The ancient fear of breaking a mirror, for example, traces back to the Roman belief that mirrors held fragments of the soul. Shattering one meant 7 years of bad luck, a number the Romans associated with the cycles of life and death. These ideas didn't disappear, they evolved, carried forward by generations who found comfort in the familiar rhythms of tradition. As we explore the origins of superstitions, it's clear that they were more than just primitive attempts to explain the unknown. They were a way for early humans to connect with the world around them, to find order in chaos, and to feel a sense of control over the unpredictable. And as we'll see, these ancient practices didn't just stay in the past, they laid the groundwork for the superstitions that still shape our world today. Now, let's take a closer look at how ancient religions played a pivotal role in shaping the superstitions we still encounter today. From the earliest days of human civilization, people sought to make sense of the world around them, often attributing natural phenomena and life's uncertainties to the will of gods or spirits. This deep connection between religion and superstition is where many of our modern beliefs find their roots. Take paganism, for example. In ancient pagan cultures, the world was seen as a place teeming with divine forces, gods of the harvest, spirits of the forest, or deities controlling the seas. These weren't just abstract ideas, they were deeply intertwined with daily life. To ensure a good harvest or safe passage at sea, people performed rituals to appease these higher powers. It was believed that failing to honor the gods properly could lead to disaster. This idea of divine intervention, that gods could directly influence human lives, became a cornerstone of many superstitions. One striking example comes from ancient Rome, where the interpretation of omens was a serious matter. Before making important decisions, Roman leaders would consult priests who would examine the behavior of birds or the entrails of sacrificed animals to predict the future. If the signs were unfavorable, plans might be delayed or abandoned altogether. These practices weren't just about superstition, they were a way of seeking guidance in an unpredictable world. Over time, the fear of ignoring such signs evolved into the modern idea of bad luck. Similarly, in Norse mythology, the concept of fate or weird was central to their worldview. The Norse believed that the threads of destiny were woven by the Norns, powerful beings who controlled the lives of gods and mortals alike. This belief in predestined outcomes led to a culture where omens and signs were taken very seriously. For instance, seeing a raven before a journey might be interpreted as a warning of danger ahead. These ideas didn't just fade away, they lingered, influencing later superstitions about luck, fate, and the importance of interpreting signs. What's fascinating is how these ancient practices didn't disappear with the rise of monotheistic religions like Christianity or Islam. Instead, they merged and adapted. Many of the rituals and beliefs from pagan traditions were absorbed into these new faiths, often with a different interpretation. For example, the Christian practice of blessing a house to ward off evil spirits echoes earlier pagan rituals meant to protect homes from malevolent forces. This blending of beliefs created a rich tapestry of superstitions that continue to shape how we think about luck, fate, and the unseen forces that influence our lives. As we move forward, it's worth considering how these ancient ideas evolved under the influence of emerging monotheistic religions. The next chapter of this story reveals how superstitions were reinterpreted and reshaped to fit new religious frameworks, creating a fascinating bridge between the old and the new. Ancient Egypt's mythology is a treasure trove of beliefs that have echoed through the ages, shaping superstitions still alive today. One of the most enduring ideas is the concept of the evil eye, a malevolent gaze believed to bring harm or misfortune. To the ancient Egyptians, the evil eye wasn't just a superstition, it was a very real threat. They believed that certain individuals or even spirits could harness this power to curse others. And so they turned to amulets for protection. These small, symbolic objects were more than just decorations. They were shields against unseen dangers. The Eye of Horus, for example, was one of the most powerful amulets. It symbolized protection, health, and restoration, and its design, a stylized eye with distinctive markings, has been found in tombs, temples, and even everyday jewelry. What's fascinating is how this ancient symbol has carried over into modern times. You've probably seen the Eye of Horus on everything from jewelry to tattoos, often worn as a talisman to ward off bad luck. It's a testament to how deeply these ancient beliefs have seeped into our collective consciousness. But the Egyptians didn't stop at amulets. Their entire worldview was steeped in the idea of safeguarding against misfortune, especially when it came to death. The afterlife was a central focus of their culture, and they went to extraordinary lengths to ensure a safe passage for the deceased. Mummification, elaborate tombs, and grave goods weren't just rituals, they were precautions. The Egyptians believed that if the dead weren't properly prepared, their spirits could return to haunt the living. This fear of restless souls has persisted in many cultures, manifesting in modern superstitions about ghosts and haunted places. Even the idea of a curse, like the infamous curse of the pharaohs, stems from these ancient beliefs. Stories of archaeologists falling ill or experiencing bad luck after disturbing tombs have only fueled the myth, showing how deeply these ancient fears still resonate. What's truly remarkable is how these Egyptian beliefs didn't stay confined to the Nile. Through trade, conquest, and cultural exchange, they spread across the Mediterranean, influencing Greek, Roman, and even Middle Eastern traditions. The evil eye, for instance, became a widespread concept appearing in various forms across cultures, and the use of amulets, that practice became universal, evolving into charms, lockets, and even modern-day good luck tokens. The legacy of ancient Egypt is everywhere if you know where to look. So, the next time you see someone wearing an Eye of Horus pendant or hear a story about a cursed object, remember, you're witnessing the ripple effects of a civilization that lived thousands of years ago but still shapes the way we think about luck, protection, and the unknown. These aren't just superstitions, they're threads connecting us to a distant past, reminding us that some fears and the ways we cope with them are timeless. The ancient Greeks and Romans didn't just build empires, they built the foundations of many superstitions we still carry with us today. Think about it. How often have you avoided walking under a ladder or felt a twinge of unease when a black cat crosses your path? These rituals and fears, deeply rooted in history, trace back to the way these civilizations viewed the world. For the Greeks, life was governed by Moira or fate, a force so powerful that even the gods couldn't escape it. This belief in an unchangeable destiny seeped into their daily lives, shaping rituals and omens designed to appease or interpret the will of the divine. One of the most famous examples, the Oracle of Delphi, where people traveled from far and wide to seek guidance about their futures. The idea that fate could be predicted or even controlled by certain actions or signs became a cornerstone of Greek thought, and it's a concept that still lingers in modern superstitions. The Romans, on the other hand, took this a step further with their practice of augury, reading the will of the gods through the behavior of birds. Imagine this: before any major decision, whether it was going to war or building a new temple, Roman leaders would consult the skies. The flight patterns, the calls, even the direction birds flew in, all of it was interpreted as a divine message. This practice wasn't just about superstition. It was a way to legitimize decisions, to give them a sense of divine approval. And while we might not consult birds today, the idea of looking for signs in the world around us hasn't entirely disappeared. Think about how people still interpret lucky or unlucky events in their lives, like finding a penny heads up or breaking a mirror. Both cultures also left us with a legacy of symbolic numbers. The Greeks, for instance, revered the number 3 as sacred, tied to their belief in harmony and balance. The Romans, however, feared the number 13, especially in groups. This fear was so ingrained that it even influenced their architecture. Many Roman buildings avoided having a 13th floor. Today, the fear of 13, or triskaidekaphobia, is still widespread, with many buildings and even airlines skipping the number entirely. It's fascinating how these ancient beliefs have managed to persist for thousands of years, isn't it? To understand just how deeply these ideas were embedded, we can turn to classical texts. The Roman poet Virgil, in his epic The Aeneid, describes how Aeneas seeks divine approval through augury before founding Rome. Similarly, Greek tragedies like Oedipus Rex hinge on the idea of fate, a theme that resonates with the modern fear of tempting destiny. These stories weren't just entertainment. They were lessons in how to navigate a world filled with invisible forces. But how did these ideas survive the collapse of these ancient empires? The answer lies in the Middle Ages, when scholars and monks preserved classical texts, ensuring that Greek and Roman thought continued to influence Western culture. The superstitions and rituals of these ancient civilizations became intertwined with Christian beliefs, creating a unique blend of old and new that still shapes our world today. The next time you knock on wood or avoid stepping on a crack, remember, you're carrying on a tradition that stretches back thousands of years, all the way to the thinkers and dreamers of ancient Greece and Rome. The fall of the Roman Empire marked a dramatic turning point, not just for politics and culture, but also for the world of superstitions. As Christianity spread across Europe, it began to reshape the spiritual landscape, taking ancient pagan beliefs and either weaving them into its own narrative or casting them out as heresy. Many rituals and symbols from older traditions were absorbed into Christian practices, often with new meanings. For example, the winter solstice celebrations honoring the sun god were rebranded as Christmas, while the spring festivals dedicated to fertility became Easter. But not all pagan traditions were so lucky. Some were outright demonized, labeled as dangerous or evil by the church. One of the most striking examples of this transformation was the medieval fear of witchcraft. What were once seen as natural healers or wise women, often practitioners of ancient folk medicine, were now viewed as agents of the devil. This fear wasn't just a vague superstition, it had very real consequences. Witch trials became horrifyingly common, and even the most mundane objects or creatures took on sinister meanings. Take black cats, for instance. In ancient Egypt, they were revered as sacred animals, but by the Middle Ages, they were seen as familiars of witches, companions to those accused of dark magic. Similarly, broomsticks, once simple household tools, became symbols of witchcraft, tied to stories of witches flying to secret gatherings. This era also saw the rise of folklore that blended Christian and pagan elements, creating a rich tapestry of superstitions that still linger today. The idea of the evil eye, for example, persisted alongside prayers for divine protection. Communities lived in constant fear of curses, demons, and unseen forces, and the church often used these fears to reinforce its authority. But even as superstitions were shaped by fear, they also reflected the hopes and anxieties of everyday people. The belief in charms, amulets, and protective rituals offered a sense of control in an unpredictable world. By the time the Renaissance dawned, however, the tide began to turn. Scholars and thinkers started to revisit the ancient texts and philosophies of Greece and Rome, sparking a renewed interest in the wisdom of the past. This revival didn't just bring back art and science, it also breathed new life into ancient superstitions, blending them with the innovations of the time. And as we'll see, this fusion of old and new would set the stage for the superstitions we recognize in the modern world. As Europe emerged from the Middle Ages, a wave of intellectual curiosity swept across the continent, bringing with it a renewed fascination for the ancient world. The Renaissance, a period of cultural and intellectual rebirth, didn't just revive art, science, and philosophy, it also breathed new life into long-forgotten superstitions. Scholars and thinkers of the time turned to the works of ancient Greece and Rome, rediscovering texts that spoke of astrology, alchemy, and numerology. These practices, once dismissed as relics of a bygone era, suddenly found themselves at the forefront of Renaissance thought. Take astrology, for example. The idea that the stars and planets could influence human behavior wasn't new. It dated back to the Babylonians and was refined by the Greeks and Romans. But during the Renaissance, astrology became a cornerstone of intellectual life. Even the most educated individuals of the era, from physicians to philosophers, believed that the movements of celestial bodies could predict everything from the outcome of battles to a person's temperament. Kings and queens relied on astrologers to guide their decisions, and universities offered courses on the subject. It wasn't just a fringe belief, it was mainstream science. Alchemy, too, experienced a surge in popularity during this time. Rooted in ancient Egyptian and Hellenistic traditions, alchemy was seen as a path to unlocking the secrets of nature. Renaissance alchemists sought not only to turn base metals into gold, but also to discover the elixir of life, a substance believed to grant immortality. Figures like Paracelsus, a Swiss physician and alchemist, blended mystical practices with early scientific inquiry, creating a bridge between superstition and the emerging field of chemistry. And then there's numerology, the study of the mystical significance of numbers. Renaissance thinkers were captivated by the idea that numbers held hidden meanings and could reveal divine truth. This belief was heavily influenced by the works of Pythagoras, who saw numbers as the building blocks of the universe. Numerology found its way into everything from architecture to music, as artists and scholars sought to create works that resonated with cosmic harmony. But here's the twist: this revival of ancient superstitions didn't last forever. As the Renaissance gave way to the Enlightenment, a new era of reason and skepticism began to take hold. Thinkers like Isaac Newton and Galileo Galilei, who were themselves influenced by Renaissance ideas, started to challenge the mystical worldview. The scientific method began to replace superstition, and practices like astrology and alchemy were increasingly seen as relics of a less enlightened age. Yet, even as the Enlightenment pushed these beliefs to the margins, their influence lingered, shaping the way we think about the universe and our place in it. So, while the Renaissance may have rekindled ancient superstitions, it also set the stage for their eventual decline, a fascinating reminder of how ideas evolve over time, blending the mystical with the rational in ways that continue to shape our world today. The Enlightenment marked a turning point in how humanity viewed the world, a seismic shift from reliance on mysticism and tradition to the embrace of reason, evidence, and science. Thinkers during this period, like Voltaire and Isaac Newton, became torchbearers of a new way of thinking. Voltaire, with his sharp wit and unrelenting critique of dogma, famously declared, "Superstition sets the whole world in flames, philosophy quenches them." This wasn't just rhetoric, it was a call to arms against the irrational beliefs that had governed societies for centuries. Newton, on the other hand, used his groundbreaking work in physics and mathematics to reveal a universe governed by natural laws, not capricious gods or spirits. His discoveries, like the laws of motion and universal gravitation, offered a framework for understanding the world that left little room for superstition. But this transition wasn't without conflict. As Enlightenment ideas gained traction, they clashed with deeply ingrained superstitions that had been part of human culture for millennia. People had long turned to charms, omens, and rituals to explain the unexplainable, whether it was a sudden illness, a failed harvest, or a stroke of bad luck. For many, these beliefs weren't just habits, they were lifelines in an unpredictable world. So, when Enlightenment thinkers began to challenge these practices, it created a profound tension. On one side, there was the promise of progress, logic, and discovery. On the other, there was the comfort of tradition and the fear of the unknown. Even as science began to illuminate the mysteries of the natural world, superstitions didn't vanish overnight. In fact, they often found ways to coexist with rational thought. For example, the widespread belief in witchcraft persisted in some areas well into the 18th century, despite growing skepticism. And while Newton's laws could explain the movement of planets, they couldn't erase the human tendency to seek patterns and meaning in chaos. This duality between reason and belief shows just how deeply rooted superstitions are in the human psyche. The Enlightenment didn't eradicate superstition, it simply shifted the conversation. As scientific thought advanced, superstitions adapted, often retreating into the shadows or blending with new ideas. But the legacy of this period is undeniable. It laid the groundwork for a world where reason and evidence could challenge the irrational, even if the battle is still being fought today. Even in our modern, science-driven world, superstitions have a way of clinging to our daily lives. It's fascinating, isn't it? No matter how much we understand about the universe, there's still a part of us that feels compelled to knock on wood, avoid walking under ladders, or carry a lucky charm. But why do these ancient beliefs persist in an age where technology and reason dominate? One of the key reasons lies in the way our brains are wired. Humans have an inherent need for control, especially in situations where outcomes are uncertain. Superstitions, in a way, give us a sense of agency, a way to influence the uncontrollable. Think about athletes who wear the same socks for every game, or students who clutch a special pen during exams. These rituals may not change the outcome, but they provide a psychological comfort, a feeling that we've done everything we can to tip the odds in our favor. Another factor is our brain's natural tendency to seek patterns, even where none exist. This is known as apophenia, the tendency to perceive connections between unrelated events. For example, if you wore a red shirt and had a great day at work, your mind might latch onto that detail and create a superstitious link. Over time, these small, coincidental patterns can solidify into beliefs. This isn't just a quirk of the mind, it's a survival mechanism. Early humans relied on pattern recognition to predict dangers and opportunities in their environment. Today, that same instinct drives us to find meaning in randomness, even if it leads to superstitions. What's even more intriguing is how these ancient beliefs have traveled across the globe thanks to globalization. Superstitions that originated in one culture often find new life in another. Take the number 4, for instance. In many East Asian cultures, the number 4 is considered unlucky because it sounds similar to the word for death in several languages. This belief has spread so widely that some buildings in Western countries now skip the 4th floor, mirroring practices in Asia. Similarly, the ancient Roman tradition of throwing salt over your shoulder to ward off bad luck has become a common gesture worldwide, even among people who don't know its origins. Globalization hasn't just connected economies and cultures, it's also woven a shared tapestry of superstitions, blending ancient traditions into the fabric of modern life. So, while science and technology continue to advance, superstitions endure because they tap into something deeply human: our need for comfort, control, and meaning in an unpredictable world. They remind us that, despite all our progress, we're still creatures of habit, history, and hope. And as long as uncertainty exists, superstitions will likely continue to find their place in our lives, whether we're crossing our fingers for good luck or carrying a talisman to face the unknown. Trade routes, conquests, and migrations have long acted as invisible highways for more than just goods and people. They've carried ideas, beliefs, and superstitions across continents, blending ancient traditions into the fabric of distant cultures. Take Feng Shui, for instance, a practice rooted in ancient Chinese philosophy that dates back thousands of years. Originally developed to harmonize human existence with the natural world, Feng Shui has become a global phenomenon, influencing everything from office layouts in New York to home designs in London. But here's the fascinating part: as it spread, Feng Shui didn't stay exactly the same. It adapted, merging with Western concepts of interior design and even modern psychology, creating a hybrid that feels both ancient and entirely new. This process of adaptation is a hallmark of how superstitions travel. Indian astrology, or Jyotish, is another prime example. Rooted in Vedic texts over 5,000 years old, it began as a deeply spiritual system tied to Hindu cosmology. Yet, as Indian communities migrated and shared their traditions, astrology found a new audience in the West. Today, it's not uncommon to hear someone talk about their moon sign or Vedic chart alongside their Western zodiac sign. These ancient practices didn't just transplant themselves, they evolved, absorbing elements of their new cultural environments while retaining their core principles. Experts often point to this phenomenon as a form of cultural syncretism, where beliefs from different traditions blend together to create something entirely unique. It's not just about superstitions being adopted, it's about how they're reinterpreted to resonate with new audiences. For example, the ancient Roman belief in the evil eye, a curse cast by a malevolent glare, has parallels in Middle Eastern, South Asian, and even Latin American cultures. In each context, the superstition takes on a slightly different meaning, shaped by local customs and values. This adaptability is what allows ancient superstitions to endure even in a modern, globalized world. But why do these beliefs spread so effectively? One theory is that superstitions often address universal human anxieties: fear of the unknown, desire for control, or the need for reassurance in uncertain times. Whether it's a talisman to ward off bad luck or a ritual to ensure good fortune, these practices offer a sense of comfort that transcends cultural boundaries. And as they travel, they pick up new layers of meaning, becoming part of the collective consciousness of societies far removed from their origins. As we explore the globalization of superstitions, it's clear that their journey is far from linear. They don't just move from one place to another, they transform, adapt, and sometimes even return to their roots in new forms. This dynamic interplay between the ancient and the modern, the local and the global, reveals just how deeply intertwined our beliefs are with the stories we tell about the world around us. And with that, let's turn our attention to some of the most enduring superstitions themselves, tracing their ancient origins and uncovering how they've shaped the way we think today. One of the most fascinating and enduring superstitions in human history is the belief in the evil eye. This ancient concept, rooted in the fear of a malevolent gaze causing harm or misfortune, has traveled across millennia and cultures, evolving yet never losing its grip on the human imagination. Its story begins in Mesopotamia, one of the earliest cradles of civilization, where clay tablets dating back to around 3000 B.C.E. describe the evil eye as a dangerous force capable of bringing illness, destruction, or even death. From there, the idea spread like wildfire, weaving itself into the fabric of countless societies. The Greeks and Romans adopted the belief wholeheartedly, integrating it into their mythologies and daily lives. In Greek culture, the evil eye was associated with envy, often directed by the jealous or the envious toward those who enjoyed good fortune. To ward off its effects, people turned to protective symbols like the now iconic blue glass eye charm. Similarly, in Roman society, the evil eye was seen as a pervasive threat, leading to the creation of amulets and rituals designed to deflect its power. Even the philosopher Plutarch wrote about it, describing how certain individuals could unintentionally inflict harm simply by looking at others with envy or malice. But the evil eye didn't stop there. It found fertile ground in the Middle East, where it became deeply ingrained in cultural practices. In many Middle Eastern traditions, the evil eye is countered with protective talismans such as the nazar, a blue and white glass bead that's still widely used today. The belief even made its way into religious texts, including the Quran and the Bible, where references to the eye of envy or the wicked gaze underscore its perceived danger. Fast forward to modern times and you'll find the evil eye alive and well. In Italy, the malocchio gesture, a hand signal resembling horns, is used to ward off the evil eye's curse. In Turkey, blue beads hang in homes, cars, and even on baby carriages. And in places like Mexico and Brazil, similar protective charms are commonplace. What's remarkable is how this ancient superstition has adapted to contemporary life, blending seamlessly into modern rituals and practices. Why does the evil eye persist? Perhaps it's because it speaks to a universal human experience, the fear of envy and the unknown. Even in a world driven by science and reason, the idea that someone's ill will could bring us harm resonates on a deeply emotional level. It's a superstition that has survived empires, religions, and technological revolutions, proving just how powerful these ancient beliefs can be. And speaking of powerful beliefs, let's turn our attention to another superstition that has stood the test of time, one that connects the ancient world to our modern lives in equally intriguing ways. Numbers have always held a special kind of power over the human imagination. For ancient cultures, they weren't just tools for counting or measuring, they were gateways to the divine, keys to unlocking the mysteries of the universe. Take the Babylonians, for example. Over 4,000 years ago, they believed numbers were deeply tied to the cosmos, with certain digits carrying divine energy. To them, numbers weren't just symbols, they were living, breathing forces that shaped the world. This idea was later refined by the Pythagoreans, a group of ancient Greek philosophers who saw numbers as the building blocks of reality. They believed that everything from the stars in the sky to the music we hear could be explained through numerical relationships, but this reverence for numbers didn't just inspire awe, it also sparked fear. One of the most enduring examples is the number 13. The fear of 13, known as triskaidekaphobia, has its roots in ancient mythology. In Norse legend, the god Loki crashed a banquet of 12 gods, bringing the total to 13, a gathering that ended in chaos and tragedy. From there, the number became synonymous with bad luck, a superstition that persists to this day. You've probably noticed how many buildings skip the 13th floor, or how some people avoid traveling on the 13th of the month. It's a fear so ingrained in our culture that it's shaped everything from architecture to daily routines. Then there's the infamous number 666, often referred to as the number of the beast in Christian tradition. This association comes from the Book of Revelation, where it's linked to evil and apocalyptic visions. Over time, 666 has become a symbol of dread, appearing in everything from horror films to conspiracy theories. But here's the twist. In some ancient cultures, like the Chinese, the number 6 is actually considered lucky. This contrast shows how the meaning of numbers can shift dramatically depending on the cultural lens through which they're viewed. What's fascinating is how these ancient beliefs about numbers continue to influence us today. Numerology, the study of the mystical significance of numbers, is still practiced by many, offering insights into everything from personality traits to life paths. And while some might dismiss it as mere superstition, there's no denying the psychological power numbers hold over us. They tap into something deep within our collective psyche, a blend of ancient wisdom and modern fascination. This connection between numbers and symbolism doesn't exist in isolation. It's part of a broader tapestry of practices where humans have sought meaning in the world around them, whether through astrology, sacred geometry, or even the alignment of ancient monuments. Numbers, in many ways, are just one thread in this intricate web of belief, a reminder of how deeply interconnected our past and present truly are. From the sacred cats of ancient Egypt to the ominous owls of Rome, animals have long held a powerful place in the human imagination. Across cultures and centuries, these creatures have been woven into the fabric of superstition, carrying meanings far beyond their physical forms. In ancient Egypt, for example, cats were revered as divine protectors, believed to embody the spirit of the goddess Bastet. To harm a cat was not just a crime, it was an act of sacrilege. This reverence was so profound that Egyptians would mourn their feline companions by shaving their eyebrows, a gesture of deep respect that underscored the animal's sacred status. But not all animals were seen as benevolent. In ancient Rome, the hoot of an owl was considered a harbinger of doom, a sign that death or disaster was near. This belief was so entrenched that even the great Roman statesman Cicero reportedly interpreted an owl's cry as an omen of his own impending fate. Centuries later, this superstition still lingers in modern culture, where owls are often depicted as mysterious, even foreboding creatures in literature and film. Perhaps one of the most enduring animal superstitions is the association of black cats with bad luck. This belief traces its roots to medieval Europe, where black cats were linked to witchcraft and dark magic. It was thought that witches could transform into black cats to roam undetected, and spotting one was seen as a sign of misfortune. Even today, the sight of a black cat crossing your path can send a shiver down the spine of the superstitious. Yet in some cultures, like in Japan and parts of the UK, black cats are considered symbols of good fortune, illustrating how superstitions can vary dramatically from one society to another. These animal-based superstitions reveal something fascinating about humanity: our tendency to project our fears, hopes, and values onto the natural world. Animals, with their enigmatic behaviors and otherworldly presence, became symbols of the unknown vessels for our deepest anxieties and aspirations. And while the specific beliefs may have evolved, the underlying human impulse to ascribe meaning to the creatures around us remains unchanged. But animals aren't the only objects of superstition. Just as we've imbued animals with symbolic power, we've also assigned meaning to everyday objects, from lucky charms to cursed relics. This interplay between the tangible and the mystical shapes not only our superstitions, but also the way we navigate the world around us. Throughout history, humans have turned to objects for protection, guidance, and luck, believing that certain items hold the power to influence their fate. These objects, amulets, talismans, and charms have been woven into the fabric of ancient cultures, serving as tangible connections to the unseen forces that shape our lives. Take, for example, the Egyptian scarab beetle. To the ancient Egyptians, this small creature symbolized rebirth and transformation, often carved into amulets and placed on mummies to ensure safe passage into the afterlife. It wasn't just a decorative piece, it was a lifeline to the divine, a physical representation of hope and renewal. Similarly, the Celtic four-leaf clover has long been revered as a symbol of good fortune. Unlike its three-leaf counterpart, finding a four-leaf clover was considered a rare and magical event, believed to bring luck and ward off evil spirits. This simple plant became a powerful talisman, carried by warriors and farmers alike to protect them from harm and ensure prosperity. Fast forward to today, and you'll see echoes of these ancient practices in modern traditions. Whether it's a lucky coin jingling in a pocket or a protective bracelet worn on the wrist, people still cling to these objects as sources of comfort and assurance. But why do these objects hold such enduring appeal? Experts suggest it's a blend of psychology and culture. On one hand, carrying a talisman gives people a sense of control in an unpredictable world. It's a way to channel hope and focus intentions, creating a mental anchor that reduces anxiety. On the other hand, these objects are steeped in cultural memory, passed down through generations as symbols of shared beliefs and values. They remind us of our connection to something greater, whether it's the divine, the natural world, or the collective wisdom of our ancestors. And let's not forget the rituals that often accompany these objects. Rituals, whether it's rubbing a lucky coin before a big decision or wearing a specific piece of jewelry during a significant event, amplify the power of these objects. They transform simple items into vessels of meaning, infusing them with personal and cultural significance. As we explore the role of rituals in superstitions, we'll see how these practices deepen our connection to the objects we hold dear. Turning them into more than just trinkets, they become symbols of our hopes, fears, and dreams. Have you ever wondered why we still throw salt over our shoulder or break a wishbone for good luck? These seemingly quirky traditions aren't just random habits, they're echoes of ancient rituals that have traveled through time, carrying the hopes and fears of generations long gone. Let's take a closer look at how these practices began and why they've stuck around even in our modern world. Take the act of throwing salt over your shoulder, for instance. This superstition dates back to ancient Rome, where salt was considered a sacred and valuable substance. Romans believed that spilling salt was an offense to the gods, a bad omen that could bring misfortune. To counteract this, they'd toss a pinch of salt over their left shoulder, a gesture meant to blind the evil spirits lurking behind them. Today, we might not believe in vengeful spirits, but the ritual persists as a way to ward off bad luck, a small nod to our ancestors' attempts to control the unpredictable. Then there's the tradition of breaking a wishbone, often seen during holiday meals. This practice traces its roots to the Etruscans, an ancient civilization in Italy. They believed that chickens were oracles capable of predicting the future. After sacrificing a chicken, they'd lay its collarbone, the wishbone, in the sun to dry, preserving its mystical properties. People would then make a wish while touching the bone, hoping to harness its power. The Romans adopted this ritual, and over time, it evolved into the friendly competition we know today. Two people pulling on either end of the bone, with the winner supposedly receiving their wish. These rituals weren't just about luck or wishes, they were deeply tied to the belief that humans could influence the divine. Ancient cultures often relied on sacrifices and offerings to appease gods or spirits, seeking protection, favor, or forgiveness. In Greece, for example, people would pour libations, offerings of wine or oil, to honor the gods during ceremonies. In Egypt, offerings of food and incense were common, meant to sustain the spirits of the dead and ensure their goodwill. These practices were a way to bridge the gap between the mortal and the divine, a tangible expression of hope in an uncertain world. Fast forward to today, and while we may not be sacrificing animals or pouring wine for the gods, the essence of these rituals lives on in our everyday superstitions. Breaking a mirror, knocking on wood, or even saying, "bless you," after a sneeze, each of these actions has its roots in ancient attempts to control fate or honor the unseen forces around us. It's fascinating to think that even in our tech-driven, science-focused world, we still carry these small pieces of the past with us, like invisible threads connecting us to those who came before. So the next time you catch yourself tossing salt or making a wish on a bone, remember, you're not just following a quirky habit. You're participating in a tradition that stretches back thousands of years, a testament to humanity's enduring desire to find meaning, control, and a little bit of magic in the world. Have you ever wondered why, in moments of uncertainty, we find ourselves reaching for a lucky charm or repeating a specific ritual? It turns out superstitions aren't just quirky habits, they're deeply rooted in the way our brains work. One of the most compelling psychological explanations is what's known as the illusion of control. This is the idea that we believe we can influence outcomes that are actually random or beyond our control. Think about a basketball player who always taps the ball 3 times before a free throw. They know, logically, that tapping the ball won't change the shot's outcome, but it feels like it does. That feeling, that tiny sense of agency, can be incredibly comforting, especially in high-stakes situations. Cognitive biases also play a huge role in why superstitions persist. Our brains are wired to find patterns even when none exist. This is called apophenia. For instance, if you wear a certain shirt on a day you ace a test, your brain might link the two events even though they're unrelated. Over time, that shirt becomes your lucky shirt, and you start wearing it for every exam. It's not logic, it's your brain trying to make sense of the world by connecting dots that aren't really connected. Rituals, too, offer a sense of stability in an unpredictable world. Performing a familiar routine, like knocking on wood or avoiding walking under ladders, can reduce anxiety by creating a sense of order. Students clutching a lucky pen during exams or athletes wearing the same socks for every game aren't just being superstitious, they're tapping into a psychological safety net. These rituals give them a sense of control and focus, even if the outcome is ultimately out of their hands. Interestingly, these behaviors aren't limited to individuals, they're woven into the fabric of cultures worldwide. In some Asian cultures, the number 4 is avoided because it sounds like the word for death, while in Western cultures, breaking a mirror is said to bring 7 years of bad luck. These shared superstitions reflect universal human tendencies, our need to feel in control, our search for meaning, and our desire to ward off fear. What's fascinating is how these psychological threads connect us across time and place. Whether it's an ancient Roman avoiding black cats or a modern-day student carrying a lucky charm, the underlying reasons are strikingly similar. Superstitions, in a way, remind us of our shared humanity, our collective effort to make sense of the chaos around us. And as we move forward, we'll explore how these universal tendencies take shape in the diverse tapestry of global cultures. Have you ever noticed how superstitions seem to change depending on where you are in the world? What one culture considers a sign of good luck, another might view as a harbinger of doom. This fascinating variation in beliefs reveals just how deeply superstitions are tied to cultural identity and history. Let's take a closer look at how different societies interpret these age-old traditions. In Japan, for example, there's a strong belief in unlucky directions known as kimen. The northeast direction, in particular, is thought to be a pathway for evil spirits. This belief dates back centuries and is still taken seriously today, influencing everything from how homes are built to where businesses place their entrances. Now compare that to the Western world, where breaking a mirror is said to bring 7 years of bad luck, a superstition rooted in ancient Roman beliefs about mirrors holding fragments of the soul. These examples show how cultural context shapes the way people perceive and respond to seemingly ordinary events. But it's not just about objects or directions. Superstitions also reflect the values and fears of a society. In India, for instance, it's considered unlucky to sweep the house after sunset because you might accidentally sweep away wealth and good fortune. This belief ties into the importance of light and prosperity in Indian culture. Meanwhile, in Turkey, spilling salt is thought to invite conflict, and the only way to counteract it is by throwing a pinch of salt over your shoulder, a practice that also appears in Western traditions, though with slightly different meanings. What's truly remarkable is how these superstitions have adapted over time, even intersecting with modern technology. In South Korea, the number 4 is considered unlucky because it sounds similar to the word for death. This belief is so ingrained that many buildings skip the 4th floor, much like how some Western buildings omit the 13th floor. But today, this superstition extends to digital spaces. Some people avoid phone numbers or license plates with the number 4, showing how ancient beliefs can find new life in the digital age. These cultural variations remind us that superstitions are more than just quirky traditions. They're windows into the collective psyche of a society, revealing how people make sense of the world around them. And as we'll see next, these beliefs continue to evolve, blending the old with the new in ways that might surprise you. Have you ever hesitated before pressing send on an email chain, worried that breaking it might bring you bad luck? Or maybe you felt a little thrill when your phone number adds up to a sequence you consider lucky. These moments reveal something fascinating. Even in our hyper-connected digital world, ancient superstitions have found a way to adapt and thrive. Take the classic chain email, for example. Back in the 1990s and early 2000s, these messages often claimed that failing to forward them would result in misfortune, whether it was 7 years of bad luck or something even more dire. Sound familiar? It's almost like a modern twist on the age-old belief in curses or omens. The medium changed, but the underlying fear of tempting fate remained the same. And then there's the world of technology itself. As artificial intelligence becomes more advanced, some people have started to treat it with the same wary respect our ancestors might have reserved for gods or spirits. Think about it. How many times have you joked about AI taking over the world, or wondered if your smart assistant was secretly listening in? These half-serious fears echo the same unease humans have felt toward the unknown for centuries. Even something as simple as emojis can carry a layer of superstition. Sending a 4-leaf clover or a horseshoe emoji to wish someone luck isn't just a cute gesture, it's a continuation of ancient traditions. In many cultures, symbols like these were believed to ward off evil or attract good fortune. Today, they've simply been repackaged for the digital age. What's truly remarkable is how these modern superstitions still serve the same purpose as their ancient counterparts. They help us make sense of the unpredictable. Whether it's nervously deleting a chain email or carefully choosing a lucky phone number, these behaviors reveal a deep-seated human need to feel some measure of control over our lives. So, as we navigate this ever-changing world of technology, it's worth asking, are superstitions just relics of the past, or do they continue to shape how we interact with the world around us? The answer might surprise you. Have you ever hesitated to make an important decision because of a gut feeling or an old belief? Superstitions often play a surprisingly powerful role in how we navigate life's biggest moments, from launching a business to tying the knot. These age-old beliefs, rooted in ancient cultures, continue to shape our choices in ways we might not even realize. Take, for example, the widely held aversion to making major decisions on Friday the 13th. For many, this day carries an air of bad luck, a modern echo of ancient fears tied to the number 13 and its associations with misfortune. Businesses might delay product launches, travelers might postpone trips, and even everyday decisions can feel riskier on this so-called unlucky day. But it's not just about avoiding bad luck. Superstitions can also push us toward positive actions, especially in traditions like weddings. In many cultures, couples carefully select auspicious dates for their ceremonies, often consulting astrologers or almanacs to ensure the stars align in their favor. These practices aren't just about tradition, they're about creating a sense of security and control in a world that can often feel unpredictable. Experts suggest that these rituals tap into a deep psychological need for reassurance, offering a comforting framework in the face of life's uncertainties. Of course, the influence of superstitions isn't always so benign. In some cases, these beliefs can lead to irrational decisions with serious consequences. For instance, people might avoid necessary medical treatments because they believe in the power of charms or omens, or they might reject beneficial opportunities out of fear of defying superstitions. This darker side of superstitions reveals how deeply ingrained these beliefs can be, even in the modern world. They can cloud judgment, create unnecessary anxiety, and sometimes even hold us back from progress. So, why do we cling to these beliefs even when logic tells us otherwise? Psychologists point to the human brain's tendency to seek patterns and meaning, even in random events. Superstitions offer a way to make sense of chaos, giving us a sense of control over the uncontrollable. But as we explore the impact of these beliefs, it's worth asking, when do they help us and when do they hinder us? As we peel back the layers of superstition's role in decision-making, we begin to see a fascinating interplay between ancient traditions and modern psychology, one that continues to shape our lives in ways both subtle and profound. Superstitions, while often seen as harmless quirks of human belief, have a darker side, one that has fueled fear, prejudice, and even violence throughout history. Take the infamous witch trials of early modern Europe and colonial America, for example. What began as superstitions about magic and malevolent spirits spiraled into mass hysteria, leading to the persecution and execution of thousands, mostly women. These accusations were often rooted in fear, fear of the unknown, fear of those who didn't conform to societal norms, and fear of forces beyond human control. Superstitions became a weapon used to justify discrimination and eliminate perceived threats. But it wasn't just witches who suffered. Across cultures, superstitions have been used to marginalize entire groups. In medieval Europe, for instance, Jewish communities were often scapegoated during times of crisis, accused of causing plagues or economic downturns through supposed curses or conspiracies. These baseless beliefs led to violence, expulsions, and systemic discrimination that persisted for centuries. Similarly, in parts of Africa and Asia, superstitions surrounding albinism have resulted in horrific attacks on individuals with the condition, driven by irrational beliefs about their supposed magical powers or curses. The danger lies in how easily superstitions can be weaponized. When irrational beliefs are taken to extremes, they can dehumanize entire groups, stripping them of dignity and safety. They feed on fear and ignorance, creating a cycle of prejudice that's hard to break. And while we might like to think of these examples as relics of the past, the truth is that superstitions still influence modern prejudices in subtle but significant ways. Efforts to debunk these harmful beliefs have been ongoing for centuries. Thinkers like Voltaire and other Enlightenment figures challenged the superstitions of their time, advocating for reason and science over fear and ignorance. Today, education and critical thinking remain our best tools for combating the darker side of superstition. By understanding the historical roots of these beliefs, we can better recognize their lingering effects and work toward a more rational, compassionate world. For centuries, humans have turned to superstitions to explain the mysteries of the world, why bad luck seems to follow a broken mirror, or why the stars might dictate our fate. But as science has advanced, it's shed light on many of these beliefs, revealing them to be more myth than reality. Take astrology, for example. While it's one of the oldest belief systems, linking personality traits and life events to celestial bodies, modern astronomy and psychology have shown that the stars and planets don't actually influence our lives in the way astrology suggests. Studies have repeatedly found no evidence that the position of the stars at birth has any measurable impact on who we are or what we'll become. As astronomer Carl Sagan once said, "Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and so far, astrology hasn't met that standard." Another superstition that science has unraveled is the fear surrounding eclipses. Ancient cultures often saw eclipses as omens of doom, with myths depicting them as celestial battles or the wrath of gods. But today, we know that eclipses are simply the result of the moon passing between the Earth and the Sun, a predictable alignment that can be calculated with precision. This scientific understanding hasn't just demystified eclipses, it's turned them into awe-inspiring events that bring people together to witness the beauty of the cosmos. Yet, even with these explanations, superstitions persist. Why is that? Part of the answer lies in the human brain's tendency to find patterns even where none exist. We're wired to seek meaning in randomness, which can make superstitions feel comforting or even logical. Add to that the power of tradition. Many superstitions are passed down through generations, becoming deeply ingrained in cultures. And let's not forget the role of confirmation bias, where we remember the times a superstition seemed to work and forget the countless times it didn't. So, while science continues to challenge and debunk these beliefs, It's clear that superstitions are more than just outdated ideas. They're a reflection of how we process the world around us. And in that sense, they offer a fascinating glimpse into the human experience, even as we strive to move beyond them. When times feel uncertain, people often cling to what they can control, even if it's something as intangible as a superstition. Whether it's carrying a lucky charm, avoiding cracks on the sidewalk, or knocking on wood, these rituals offer a sense of stability in a world that feels chaotic. During moments of crisis like pandemics, economic downturns, or even personal struggles, superstitions act as psychological anchors. They give us a sense of agency, however small, in situations where we might otherwise feel powerless. Take the COVID-19 pandemic, for example. As the world grappled with fear, isolation, and uncertainty, many turned to symbols of luck or protection. Sales of items like lucky bracelets, protective amulets, and even pandemic pennies surged. These objects weren't just whimsical purchases, they represented hope. They became tangible reminders that despite the overwhelming odds, something out there might be on our side. Even if logic tells us these objects don't have magical powers, the comfort they provide is very real. It's a way of saying, I'm doing everything I can to protect myself and my loved ones. This isn't unique to modern times either. Throughout history, during plagues, wars, and famines, people have sought solace in rituals and beliefs that defy logic. The Black Death in medieval Europe saw a rise in protective talismans and prayers. During the Great Depression, lucky rabbits' feet became popular symbols of good fortune. These patterns show that superstitions aren't just quirks of human behavior. They're deeply rooted in our need to feel secure when the world feels unpredictable. But what does this tell us about the future of superstitions? As long as uncertainty exists, and let's face it, it always will, these beliefs aren't going anywhere. In fact, they might evolve. With the rise of technology, we're already seeing digital superstitions emerge, like avoiding certain numbers in passwords or believing in lucky emojis. The forms may change, but the underlying need for comfort and control remains constant. Superstitions, in all their variations, are a testament to humanity's enduring resilience, a way of finding light even in the darkest of times. As we step into the future, one question lingers: will superstitions fade into obscurity, or will they evolve alongside us? It's a fascinating dilemma, especially when we consider how deeply rooted these beliefs are in human history. Some argue that as technology advances and science demystifies the unknown, superstitions might lose their grip. After all, we live in an era where artificial intelligence can predict outcomes, and medical breakthroughs explain phenomena once attributed to divine intervention or curses. But if history has taught us anything, it's that superstitions are remarkably resilient. They don't just vanish, they transform. Take, for example, how ancient rituals have already adapted to modern life. The practice of knocking on wood, originally tied to pagan beliefs about tree spirits, has persisted for centuries. Today, it's often done without a second thought, almost like a reflex. This suggests that superstitions might not disappear, but instead find new ways to integrate into our lives. Experts predict that as our world becomes more digital, we might even see new forms of superstitions emerge. Imagine a future where people avoid certain algorithms or software updates out of fear of bad luck. Sounds strange, but it's not so different from how ancient cultures avoided specific days or objects. Cultural shifts also play a significant role. As societies become more interconnected, beliefs from one culture often blend with another, creating hybrid superstitions. For instance, the global popularity of practices like Feng Shui or yoga shows how ancient traditions can find new relevance in a modern context. This blending of ideas suggests that superstitions aren't static. They're dynamic, evolving to fit the needs and anxieties of each generation. But what about the more obscure or seemingly outdated beliefs? Will they survive? Some experts believe that as education spreads and scientific literacy grows, certain superstitions may indeed fade. Yet, even in highly educated societies, you'll still find people avoiding black cats or tossing salt over their shoulders. This persistence hints at something deeper, a human need to find meaning in the unpredictable, to feel a sense of control in a chaotic world. Reflecting on the enduring legacy of ancient cultures, it's clear that superstitions are more than just quirks of the past. They're a testament to humanity's creativity and adaptability, offering us a window into how our ancestors made sense of their world. Whether they fade, evolve, or take on entirely new forms, one thing is certain: superstitions will continue to shape our lives, connecting us to the mysteries of the past while navigating the uncertainties of the future. Ancient cultures have woven threads of belief and tradition into the very fabric of our modern lives, leaving behind a legacy that still shapes how we think, act, and even make decisions. Take a moment to consider the rituals we follow without a second thought: knocking on wood for good luck, avoiding walking under ladders, or tossing salt over a shoulder. These seemingly simple acts are not just quirks of habit, they are echoes of civilizations long past, whispering their wisdom or warnings into our present. For instance, the ancient Romans believed that spilling salt was an omen of bad luck, a superstition rooted in the precious value of salt in their economy. Today, we still toss salt over our shoulders, carrying forward a tradition that has transcended centuries. Similarly, the fear of black cats, often seen as harbingers of misfortune, can be traced back to medieval Europe, where they were associated with witches and the supernatural. Even in the digital age, these age-old beliefs persist, showing how deeply ingrained they are in our collective psyche. But it's not just in small, everyday actions where we see this influence. Ancient cultures also shaped how we approach major life decisions. The practice of consulting horoscopes, for example, dates back to Babylonian astrology, where the movements of celestial bodies were believed to dictate human fate. Today, millions still turn to their star signs for guidance, whether it's about love, career, or personal growth. These beliefs, though ancient, continue to offer comfort and a sense of control in an unpredictable world. What's fascinating is how these superstitions have adapted over time, blending with modern life while retaining their core essence. They remind us that, despite the advancements of science and technology, there's still a part of us that seeks meaning in the mysterious, the symbolic, and the sacred. These enduring traditions connect us to our ancestors, bridging the gap between the past and the present in ways that are both subtle and profound. As we reflect on the lasting impact of these ancient beliefs, it's clear that they are more than just relics of history. They are living, breathing parts of who we are. They shape our rituals, influence our choices, and remind us of the timeless human desire to find order and meaning in the world. And as we move closer to wrapping up this exploration, let's take a moment to consider how these ancient whispers continue to guide us, even in ways we might not always recognize. Have you ever stopped to think about why you might avoid walking under a ladder, or why you feel a little uneasy when a black cat crosses your path? These superstitions, often passed down through generations, carry whispers of ancient cultures that shaped them. From the Romans, who believed breaking a mirror brought 7 years of bad luck, to the Egyptians who saw cats as sacred protectors, these beliefs have traveled through time to find a place in our modern lives. But what about you? What superstitions do you hold onto, and why? It's fascinating to consider how these ancient traditions might still influence your daily decisions, even if you're not fully aware of it. Take a moment to reflect on the rituals or beliefs you've adopted, whether it's knocking on wood, throwing salt over your shoulder, or avoiding certain numbers. These actions might feel like small, personal habits, but they're often rooted in centuries-old practices. For instance, the idea of knocking on wood to ward off bad luck dates back to ancient Celtic traditions where trees were believed to house protective spirits. It's remarkable how these ancient ideas continue to weave their way into our lives, often without us realizing it. So, why do we cling to these superstitions? Is it a way to feel a sense of control in an unpredictable world, or perhaps a connection to the past that gives us comfort? Whatever the reason, these beliefs reveal how deeply intertwined we are with the cultures that came before us. They remind us that, despite all our modern advancements, we're still shaped by the stories and traditions of those who walked this earth long ago. As we wrap up this exploration, let's take a step back and appreciate the enduring power of these ancient influences. They're not just quirks or old wives' tales, they're threads in the tapestry of human history, connecting us to the hopes, fears, and wisdom of our ancestors. And who knows, the next time you find yourself avoiding a ladder or knocking on wood, you might just smile, knowing you're part of a story that's been unfolding for thousands of years. As we come to the end of our journey through the fascinating connections between ancient cultures and modern superstitions, it's clear that these beliefs are far more than just quirks of human behavior. They're threads woven deeply into the fabric of our collective psyche, stretching back thousands of years. From the ancient Egyptians' fear of the evil eye to the Romans' reliance on omens, these practices reveal something fundamental about us, our desire to find meaning in the unknown. Even today, when we knock on wood or avoid walking under ladders, we're tapping into a legacy of rituals that once helped our ancestors navigate a world full of uncertainty. What's truly remarkable is how these superstitions have evolved. They've shifted forms, adapted to new cultures, and even survived the rise of science and reason. But why do they persist? Perhaps because they speak to something timeless in us, a need to feel in control, to find patterns in chaos, and to connect with something greater than ourselves. Superstitions, irrational as they may seem, are a testament to humanity's enduring creativity and resilience. They remind us that, no matter how advanced we become, we're still shaped by the stories and symbols of those who came before us. So, the next time you catch yourself tossing salt over your shoulder or crossing your fingers for luck, take a moment to appreciate the rich history behind that gesture. These small acts are more than just habits, they're echoes of ancient wisdom passed down through generations. And while we may not always understand the logic behind them, they continue to influence how we see the world and our place in it. To close, let's reflect on a thought from the philosopher Cicero, who once said, "The life of the dead is placed in the memory of the living." In many ways, our superstitions are a living memory of the cultures that shaped them, a bridge between the past and the present. They remind us that, even in our modern age, we're still deeply connected to the mysteries of our ancestors. If this exploration of history and human nature has sparked your curiosity, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What superstitions do you find intriguing or even a little mysterious? Share your stories in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden stories of our past. Together, let's keep unraveling the threads of history, one mystery at a time.